Hello, I am your teacher, Mr. Pacitti, and this is my classroom here in Orlando, Florida. So put away your mobile phones, put away your hopes of ever seeing Jack or Sam again because they missed their pissing flight back from Japan. This is Raw, and this is Graded. So we kick things off hot with a big bloody backstage brawl between Seth Rollins and Bobby Lashley. They're scrapping all over the place. They're going through gorilla. Not even No Way Jose can stop them. It is pandemonium. Seth jumps off the stage, taking out Lashley, and then the two are finally separated by superstars and officials. It's too short to grade, but hey, it's not a promo to open the show, so I'm all for it. Now it's time for a promo. So John Cena comes to the ring and announces that he will be a part of the 2019 Men's Royal Rumble match, and then immediately is interrupted by that big Scottish bastard, Drew McIntyre. Drew says that he doesn't care who Cena shares his bed with. He doesn't care what John Cena's hair looks like. What he cares about is his 16 world title wins, his main events, and the fact that Vinnie Mac said that he's the best of all time. Because Drew agrees with Vinnie Mac. But Drew has a habit of taking out the greats. He single-handedly destroyed The Shield, he decimated Dolph Ziggler in a cage match on last week's Raw, and he made Kurt Angle tap out to his own ankle lock. The greats, The Shield, Kurt Angle, Dolph Ziggler? We'll roll with it. Cena says that he's heard it all before. What makes Drew different? And Drew says that the difference is that he's going to prove it right now. Do we have a match? Yes, we do. Sort of, but hold your horses. Next, out comes Lio Rush with Bobby Lashley. Lio is whinging about Seth being a mentalist, and then Seth does something mental again and attacks Bobby Lashley. Then out comes Dean Ambrose. He gets involved, and then out comes Finn Bálor and his massive schlong, which I can't stop talking about for some reason, and it's a 6-man tag. So I'm going to assign this opening segment a separate grade from the match itself. When we talk about the issues with Raw, one thing that comes up more often than not is the fact that it's always a promo that opens the show. Obviously that hasn't happened for the past few weeks because it's the fresh start, new era, whatever you want to call it. But I think the issue with those opening promos isn't the fact that it's an opening promo to kick off the show, although that isn't especially exciting. It's the fact that they go for 20 minutes and not that much is achieved. For want of a better word, they're boring. But this wasn't. I thought the opening brawl was a great way to kick off the show. Cena kept things short, Drew was brilliant as always, and then it transitioned organically into a match, so no complaints here. So I'm going to give the opening promo a B+. The match, however, was not much more than average, not very memorable at all. I'm going to give it a C+. I just feel like it dragged at points. There were some cool moments. Cena and Ambrose scrapping on the outside was alright. There was a great little sequence from Drew and Cena, but mostly underwhelming stuff. Seth Rollins, on fire as always, picks up the win following the curb stomp to Dean Ambrose. 1, 2, 3. So I'm liking that Rollins was very much the focal point of the match. I really enjoyed his promo with Triple H last week, and he now needs to prove himself to the game. Speaking of Triple H, he then appeared on the Titantron he's just chatting to Sasha and Bayley, and I don't really understand the reason why they flashed his image up there. Well, I do. It's because they think we're all idiots and need that visual reminder of the storyline when commentary could have just done it themselves. But anyway, let's move on. Seth then approaches Triple H backstage and demands a match for the Intercontinental title tonight with Dean Ambrose, and Trips goes, yeah, you've got it. But not just that, it's not just any match, it's a Falls Count Anywhere match. Wonderful stuff. That's the main event of the show, and Seth did this lovely little grrr thing, which I liked a lot. Up next is the tribute to Mean Gene Okerlund, who sadly passed away last week. This is hosted by Hulk Hogan. I'm not going to give this one a grade, not because of Hulk Hogan or anything like that, but I just don't think it's appropriate to give something like this a grade. I'm also going to put my own personal feelings about Hulk Hogan aside here, and yes, I do think that last night's appearance could be viewed as a distasteful way of bringing Hulk Hogan back to the WWE, even after Crown Jewel, in a way that ensured that he wasn't going to get booed. But also, Mean Gene Gene and Hulk Hogan were genuine friends. You can't think of many people who it would be more appropriate to receive a tribute to Mean Gene from, and I think the words that came out of Hogan's mouth last night were very touching. And that's the last mention of Hulk Hogan that I will make in this video, because this segment was all about honouring the life of Mean Gene Okerlund, a consummate professional, the voice of many of our childhoods, and always a man who was just such an unbelievable pleasure to watch. The video package was beautifully produced, as they always are, equally smile-inducing and quite difficult viewing, knowing that Gene is no longer with us, and there's not much else that I can say here. You were one of a kind, Gene. Rest in peace. Next up, the Raw Tag Team titles are on the line as the Revival square off against Roode and Gable in a Lumberjack match. A surprisingly enjoyable match here, which isn't something that I should have to say given the level of talent in that ring, but I do have to say because of the state of the Raw Tag Division. Really fast-paced, Gable and Roode's tag team offense is fantastic. You can tell they've put in a lot of thought into how they work together in the ring, making them feel like more of a team than they otherwise would. The Revival, speaking of great teams, were just wonderful as always, a nice reminder of just how bloody good they are, and it would be easy to be upset because they lost, but I actually quite like the finish. So Gable rolls up Scott Dawson, getting the 1-2-3, but Dawson's foot was under the rope the whole time. This sets up another rematch, hopefully on a grander stage, hopefully the Royal Rumble, hopefully not the pre-show, where the Revival may finally win, the better team, let's face it. I really like the Revival. I'm giving this match a B+. Also, when the Revival do beat Gable and Roode at the Royal Rumble, which is definitely going to happen and definitely not on the pre-show, that gives a reason for Bobby Roode to turn on Chad Gable and be a heel, which is something that he should just always be, because he's 10 times better at being a heel than he is a babyface. To the ring, and Elias announces that he will be in the Men's Royal Rumble match, in song form of course. He is then interrupted by Baron Corbin, who talks about how bloody difficult it was to run Monday Night Raw week in, week out, and then get blamed for all of Vince McMahon's mistakes. He didn't actually say that. He announces then that he also will be in the Royal Rumble match, and he will then go on to headline WrestleMania, which isn't even something that I'm against, because it would be really funny. You know when Sergeant Slaughter was in the main event of WrestleMania 7 and nobody cared, so they had to move it to a smaller venue and blame death threats, which definitely didn't happen? Imagine Baron Corbin main eventing WrestleMania 35. They'd have to move it to the Impact Zone. A fine match. The two don't have tremendous chemistry, but they did try their best here. I'm going to give this one a C+. They didn't outstay their welcome. It was fairly quick, and this is a feud which needs a bit more storyline to get people invested, if that's going to happen at all. It was alright. Next up, it's time for Braun Strowman, who grabs a mic and then tosses it aside because this is no time to talk. And he is angry. Except it is time to talk because Paul Heyman appears on the Tron with Brock Lesnar, and he's got a mic and it's Paul Heyman, and it's time to talk. Heyman says that if they did come down to the ring, Brock wouldn't have an opponent at the Royal Rumble because Brock would just knacker him then. And then Braun Strowman gets a mic, because they're talking now, and he goes, "Brock, why did you come down to the ring?" And then there's an awkward silence, and it's like there's a satellite feed which is just off, because there were lots of awkward silences in this one. "Hey, I'm in the ring. Why don't you come down to the ring? Get these hands." And it was just awkward. Something about this didn't work. At this point, I should probably point out that the promos last night felt far less scripted than usual, and that's something that we've been asking for a fair amount of time, and in places, it worked. Drew McIntyre's promo was really strong, but if you're going to do that, don't do it with the guys who aren't as confident on the mic. Paul Heyman works, obviously. Braun Strowman, not so much. Anyway, Brock finally gets fed up. He walks to the ring, looks at Braun Strowman, and then walks off again. That's it. Genuinely. This gets a D+. If you're looking to build excitement for a feud that has little to no build, this is not the way to do it. This felt anticlimactic, and it was just so underwhelming, and yeah, not good at all. Next up, it's time for Jinder Mahal and Alicia Fox, a team that apparently still exists. The Mahalicia take the piss out of the crowd, and then a match happens, Apollo Crews and Ember Moon versus Mahalicia, and what do I say about this match? because I just don't care about it. But it also wasn't a bad match. Apollo and Ember pick up the win in quick fashion. I guess it's cool to see Apollo's push continue following his very dominant win of the fresh start Battle Royal last week, and I like seeing Ember Moon because I think she's fantastic. And I'm going to give this one a C+. The plus is because it was short. Next up, it's the premiere episode of A Moment of Bliss, Alexa's new talk show segment, and her guest tonight is none other than the Raw Women's Champion, Ronda Rousey. Quick video package showing just how brilliant Ronda Rousey is and how she can get on any damn talk show that she likes, and then out of nowhere, Ronda starts bigging up Sasha Banks. And then, out comes Nia Jax. That's not me doing vomiting noises because it's Nia Jax, that's what she did, genuinely. Nia demands a rematch for the title, something that nobody wants to see, and then out comes Sasha. Those two get in each other's faces, and then Sasha says, "Bitch!" because that's all you have to do to pop a wrestling crowd. And then a match is set up for right now, Sasha versus Nia, and the winner gets Ronda. So let's talk about the good here. It's great to see Sasha Banks finally recognized as an important player in the women's division in the Ronda Rousey era. I don't know why that has taken so long. Now let's talk about the bad. Nia Jax. She was just wooden as hell here, really awkward and not fun to watch. I was sort of cringing the whole time. And you know, a moment ago when I said, don't give bullet points to the people who aren't so confident on the mic to begin with? That. Or just take the mic away from Nia Jax, because she's bad. On to the match, and I thought the match itself was pretty good, if not a little predictable, because we're not going to see Nia versus Ronda again because we've seen it already, and there's no reason for it to happen. Throughout the match, Nia largely dominates, and then towards the end of the match, Bayley takes out Tamina on the outside because Tamina's trying to interfere, as well as the fact that Bayley, like the rest of us, thinks that Nia's really boring, and then Sasha locks in the bank statement, taps out. We're going to get Sasha versus Ronda Rousey for the Raw Women's Championship at the Royal Rumble. A fun enough match which gets a B-. So good to finally see Sasha Banks in the title picture where she belongs, even if it did come a little bit out of nowhere. I think this sets up a few things. Perhaps the most obvious one is Bayley turning on Sasha. Like after Sasha won, the last thing that we saw in this segment was Bayley raising Sasha's hand. We already know that we're almost definitely going to get Ronda Rousey versus Becky Lynch at WrestleMania, so Ronda is very likely to hold on to that belt. And you know what, if that sets up Bayley versus Sasha at WrestleMania, then I'm all for it. Main event time, and it's the Falls Count Anywhere match for the Intercontinental title. Seth Rollins, the challenger, versus Dean Ambrose. The match starts hot as Seth attacks Dean as Dean's making his way to the ring, and then they quickly brawl to the backstage area where they both have a little bit of a catnap, because I'm pretty sure this bit was pre-recorded. So lots of weapon spots backstage. Seth tries ramming Dean with a road case, and then Dean slams Seth on a road case, and then they brawl back to the ringside area, and Dean exposes the concrete, pulls up the mat, and then gets backflipped onto the concrete. And then back in the ring, Seth hits the buckle bomb, curb stomp. It looks like it's all over. Seth had the 3 count. Surely he's going to be the new IC title, but no. Out of nowhere, out comes Bobby Lashley, who ruins Seth, spear, and then Dean is able to make the cover. 1, 2, 3. This gets a B. A lot of people online seemed pretty pissed off about the ending, which I guess is good because Bobby Lashley has done his job. Personally, I'm quite happy with the ending because I don't really want to see any more of Seth versus Dean. I'd like to see Dean involved in a big storyline because, as I said last week, he's been so underwhelming since his return to the WWE. Give him something proper, and I'm actually quite excited about Seth and Bobby, which isn't something that I thought I'd be saying here. I thought the two did a fantastic job of bookending the show last night. First off with that brawl to open the show, and then Bobby's interference, and he put Seth through a table at the end to close the show, and I really enjoyed it. And all of this will add to Seth's intensity that we saw starting last week, his need to prove himself to Triple H, etc., building a more interesting character for Seth Rollins, which is something that he's needed for a long time too. Unfortunately, I can only really give this episode of Raw a C. It was distinctly average from start to finish, and the highlight for me was probably Bobby Roode and Chad Gable versus The Revival, which isn't something that I thought I would be saying at the beginning of this video. So fingers crossed Jack and Sam will get back soon and not miss another flight. Jack will, of course, from next week be back as the host of Raw Graded, and if you haven't checked it out already, they've been vlogging while they're out there. It looks like they've had an amazing time visiting pachinko parlors and eating sushi. Speaking of which, what's the best kind of pan to make sushi in? Japan. So that's all from me. Thanks for watching, and you can follow me on Twitter here. If you enjoy what we do here at Cultaholic, you can pledge to our Patreon. That's patreon.com/Cultaholic. And most importantly, don't forget to hit subscribe and join us.